All right, we're live.
Live.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to the Millennial Edge podcast, or it would be a vodcast, a video episode.
Vlog?
VOD, VOD.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what the kids call it these days.
I guess.
But welcome. My name is Peter Nakamura, and this is Matt Todd.
Hey
We
guys.
are the hosts of your show, and we're here to start up something new called the Millennial Edge video series. And the idea behind this is both as millennials, Matt and I, we believe we have tremendous power to influence our world, our surroundings, our community, our families, and there's tremendous potential that we have. And having some sort of resource that helps us pull out that potential can really be a helpful thing to help us change our lives and also change the lives of others. So in this video episode, we are just testing this out as a pilot and just riffing on some things as millennials that we experience, some of the topics that we want to cover in future episodes, and hopefully dig into the why of why we're doing this. And when I think of just millennials, you think of the successful millennials in the world, like Mark Zuckerberg, plenty of tech founders who have started to change the world already. In the social world, you have Malala Yousafzai. In entertainment, you have Jennifer Lawrence. In sports, you have Lionel Messi. You have so many millennials out there who are making a difference and starting to make an impact in the world. And the average millennial, like Matt and I, and many others out there, can make that same impact. And how do we prepare ourselves to get ready for that world that millennials really take over from here? So, Matt, what do you think when the word millennial pops up? What comes to mind for you?
Yeah, cool, Pete. And if we can just pause for a second, because I want to go back a little bit before we dive right into it, because there's a couple things that you talked about. Kind of one is that, there are all these well-known millennials who are super successful and they're doing incredible things for the world and for the people around them. But you and I have also the opportunity just to meet and not average, I'm not saying average people, but just, everyday people who are doing incredible things, right? And so I don't want it to kind of be thought that, we're trying to make people get to this place of like a Mark Zuckerberg, right? We want people to be the best version of themselves, and what's it going to take to be that best version? So I think that's a big part of what we're trying to have in terms of a conversation. And I think it's important kind of to go back a little bit and talk a little bit about the history of why, why we decided to do this, right? Like you and I had both been, thinking about these things. We're both huge readers. I would consider you to be, ambitious, productive, a leader, in the work that you do. And, we had this idea, and through conversation and with not just you and I, but other people, millennials coming into the workforce or millennials coming into leadership positions, really trying to figure out, what is it that I need to know? What skills do I need to start to develop? And who do I need to start talking to do those things, right? And so, you and I had been actually thinking about this separately. We didn't even know that, I was thinking about trying to do a podcast, and I'd been talking to a lot of people and mapping things out, and you had the same idea. And then when we actually got together and we were talking about this, it just clicked, right? Because we had the same idea essentially, but it was separate. And so we were able to kind of come together, as two millennials, but also just as two people, who want to make the world a better place, in our everyday lives, to start to do this. And this has been a year in the making, right? We've been kind of going back and forth, and we've had setbacks and life circumstances and all of these kinds of things. And now we're actually doing it. We're like, 2016, let's just do this. Let's get this going. It doesn't have to be perfect. We don't want to overthink things. We just need to start to do it. So I'm really excited about that. That's what I'm, and I think it's important to kind of provide that context as well. Our goal really is to provide whoever's watching this, and you know what, man, maybe 4 people, maybe it's 40,000, I don't know. But whoever's watching this, just with ideas, insights, resources, just to give them the edge. And when we say the edge, we're not talking about, how do I get better than you, right? It's how do I get better than I was yesterday, How do I become and grow and become the best version of myself so that I can contribute, not just to my own growth and not just to my own success and development, but to the growth and development and success of the people around me and of our communities and ultimately the world. Because, and I'm going to throw out a bunch of stereotypes, but, as millennials, as this generation, we want purpose. We want purpose and we want meaning in the work that we do. And we can talk about this, and I'm sure we will, that it's not just millennials, that everybody wants purpose and meaning in the work that they do. But I think it's just good to kind of just put it all out there right at the beginning. This is what we're hoping to do. This is why it's so important to us, because we have these conversations all the time. And we're both fortunate to work in environments that allow us to have these conversations, So I guess, does that work?
Yeah, no, that's great. I'm glad you stopped me, because we're just running straight forward into our deeper dive conversation. So it's really great that we paint that larger picture. And I think for this video series, what we really wanted to do is make it highly actionable for you. And we have our lives in the workplace and we have our lives at home with our families, with our friends, and both areas, we can have a lot of improvements in. We can have areas that we want to build on, areas that we want to build self-awareness on. And in the workplace specifically, if you're an employee just starting out and you want to build up your career and earn a reputation as just an excellent employee, and you want to kind of make your mark in that, or if you're a manager or somebody who looks over a team, how do you go through that process of becoming a better leader? We'll dive into those kind of topics on, like you said, Matt, how do you bring purpose to your work? How do you bring, how do you make an impact? And how do you lead? I think those are three big topics that we'll talk about in the workplace area. And then on the other side, you're talking a little bit about your personal life and areas around, I think, for me, what's really important is building that sense of every day I'm getting better. Every day I'm getting closer to that best version of myself. And how do we build that self-awareness of where we're going? How do we set better goals? How do we kind of pick up those life hacks that allow us to get there faster, those productivity tools and apps and books that we should be reading? And Matt, you and I love all that kind of stuff. So we'll dive into that. And there's plenty of crossing between the two, but to be a little bit more specific, those are kind of the topics that I think both of us are interested in, and hopefully they resonate with you as a viewer.
Yeah, I think we're gonna, I think our intention is to have maybe three audiences. We're gonna have millennials who are just coming into the workforce, and they're trying to kind of navigate themselves in this transition, coming from school or into the workforce. What are some of the things we need to start to think about and to take action on? And then we want to talk about, millennials who are coming into leadership positions. They're becoming managers, and the way we lead is different than other generations. The way we work is different than other generations. And then I think that, as a byproduct of this, we're also going to reach out to, people who are trying to better understand the millennial generation. People who are trying to how do I engage? How do I engage with these millennials that I work with? Here are the challenges that I'm facing. How do I approach these? And I'm fortunate I get to spend a lot of time doing that part as well, working with individuals, managers, companies that really are trying to figure out how do I engage millennials.
Totally.
And so, and I just one point that you made, and I totally agree. We want to talk about how do we do these things faster? How do we do these things more effectively? What are the resources? What's the right, what could be, I guess, the right path or a path? But I also want to kind of highlight that not everything is going to be easy, So there's not hacks for everything, And I think that that's something that our generation particularly, we live in this hacking kind of culture, right? That everything can be hacked. And I know you know this and I know this, but that's not true, right? Sometimes we're going to debunk, myths about millennials, but we're also probably going to debunk, what are some of the myths that we believe, that we should, for example, immediately just find our passion. And the minute that doesn't feel like it's our passion, we should move on to the next, right? That's a self-destructive behavior. And we'll talk about that, I'm sure, at one point. So, just based on the conversations we've had, the research that we've done, the experiences, let's we'll dive into, what you can hack, why, what is hacking, and what are things that, you shouldn't hack, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't necessarily, it's great to read book summaries, those help you give you some of what you need, but every once in a while, you're just going to need to read the full book,
Mm-hmm.
and that takes time and that takes intention. So I think that's important too. I think, touching on these things, and it's going to be great because I think we've got so much to talk about. And the other thing that I'm excited about is that we can reach out to you, the audience, and we can say, what do you need to know? What do you want to talk about? And let's have those conversations.
Mm-hmm. Totally. That's why we chose this platform. Be on YouTube, so there'll be comments in the sections below. So if you have any ideas or thoughts or anything that you want us to explore, let us know. We'll come back to that a little bit later.
Yeah.
So Matt, you kind of alluded to what you do for your work. Can you share with everybody, what do you do?
Yeah. So it's funny because, I can tell you what I do as a profession, or I could tell you how I spend my time, and, different people tell you how to say it different ways. I guess what I do is, and what I try to do is just to help people be better versions of themselves. My full-time job, what I get to do on a daily basis is I'm the Associate Director of Learning and Development for Free the Children and Me to We. So I work here in Toronto full-time. I have an amazing team, an amazing organization. We're primarily millennials. So it's a great opportunity and a great place for me to just really dive deep into this stuff that we're going to be talking about. And then in addition to that, I get to speak and consult and facilitate and write and do this kind of stuff. And then in addition to that, I've got a 3.5-year-old son, right? So I'm a cusper. I'm kind of on that edge of millennial and Gen X, and I've got a young son. So there are definitely unique challenges that come with that may speak to some people and may not speak to others. And then Pete, I know you bring a whole, very similar but also different experience and perspective of what it means to be a millennial.
Yeah, no, that's great. I love how you started that off by explaining what you do, not specifically from a work perspective, but from what you strive to do, which is making other people better and pulling their potential out, which is awesome. I'll try my best to frame myself that way too. My goal is to kind of like what you were saying a little bit earlier, become closer and closer to the better version of who I am every day. And working on different skill sets, different mindsets, and for me, I love just self-improvement work. I love working on different aspects of being able to control your emotions and your mind better through meditation. Building self-awareness through I have 7 questions that I check myself with every evening to see how I did. And in the workplace, I try to pick up new skills and help my team members, achieve their potential and becoming a better leader for them. So what I do right now is I work for a learning and development company called Actionable Books. And what we do is really twofold. One is we provide free book summaries. We have a community of writers that create wonderful book summaries. They're about 1,000 words long. They're bite-sized, really, and highly actionable. So how do you actually action the ideas that come from books? That's kind of our free community side. On the other side, we have a new platform. It's a learning and development platform called Actionable Conversations, which are bite-sized conversation starters based on business books that managers, leaders in organizations can run with their teams and create a moment of learning and development within their organization for just an hour a day. And it's a great program. We have a new platform that's launching with a lot of neuroscience involved, like how do we create micro feedback moments and automating that process. We're integrating it for a millennial audience, so it's every day after you finish your conversation and you commit to something. Every conversation has a commitment. There is a text message that gets sent out to you asking you how you did with that commitment, keeping you accountable. And so many other things that I'm sure we can get into in future episodes. But as you can tell, learning and growing is something that's really important to me, and something that I try to embody in my personal life and also in my work life. So yeah,
sorry, man. I was just gonna say that's what I love about you. You know, is that you're always, you know, anytime we talk, man, you're always trying to find new ways, and not just find new ways and stick to the ones that work, but, you know, find new ways to grow and to develop and, you know, to experiment and you know, to see what works and what doesn't. And I love that so much about you, man, is that you're always learning and growing and developing, not just for yourself, but for the people around you as well.
100%. That's mutual, man. I feel the same way about you as well. One last thing that I wanted to add, I think that is probably helpful, is I'm also a new manager as well. I just stepped into a marketing role with Actionable Books, and I am learning how to be a manager for the first time. And to be completely transparent with you, in the past I've applied for manager roles. I have not gotten it. I've mainly been an individual contributor, and there's so much from going from a great individual contributor to a manager, and you know, some of the topics like being a better communicator or communicating your why and your passion, why you're doing things is so important, I think, in this age, especially with millennials. So I'm hoping these videos will actually be a learning opportunity that I can share my failures and hopefully some of my successes with everybody, so we can all grow together.
I think that's right on, man. I think, you know, for us to just focus on that experience that you've had, you know, and to really put it out there, and how many other people are feeling this way, you know, how many other people are you know, have had a similar journey, and you know, as a result, I think part of what we want to do too is we want to create a community. You know, we want to create a community of people who can come together and we can have conversations about this stuff.
100%. Yeah. So Matt, I just want to go back to that first question I asked you that I jumped the gun on, but I think it's kind of a good segue into, you know, like what you've been studying for many years through your work in leadership, through your work with, you know, Free the Children, with millennials. Like what does millennials mean to you? You know, can you give us a definition of what millennials are?
Yeah, I mean, I can give you a very loose definition, and it's one of those, you know, those labels that people use to just label generation, right? So, you know, it will vary. I mean, millennial and Gen Y are interchangeable. Sometimes we use, you know, to describe the same thing. But you know, demographically, it's a generation. It's anyone who was born between, you know, like 82 and 2000. Right, so really entering into the workforce, you know, right now, right, and that's like, I mean, that's like the basic. That's just the and then there are all the kinds of characteristics and qualities and stereotypes that come with being a millennial, and I love this because I talk about this. You know, we're a generation that has, first of all, access to more knowledge and information than any generation before us, right? Mm-hmm. We're also a generation, I think, that is getting a lot of attention. We're stereotyped as being very self-centered, very egotistical, very focused on ourselves. But at the same time, the whole world is really focused in on these millennials, right? You can just Google millennial and all kinds of articles come up around, you know, how do I work with millennials? Why are millennials so entitled? Why are millennials so disloyal? You know, and it's hard because the more exposed you are to those types of things, they kind of become a self-fulfilling prophecy. You start to look for that stuff in the millennial workplace, right? So you want to affirm, oh yeah, that is true. But I don't think it is, you know, and I've written a lot about this, about some of the challenges that I've seen, especially around millennial engagement training. One of the biggest, and I don't know, maybe I'm being a little bit of like, you know, a disruptor, I don't know, which is very typical of being a millennial. But one of the challenges that I've seen in any kind of millennial engagement training that I've been part of or kind of participated in is a lot of times what happens is that we're talked about as like a pet, you know, or as like, oh man, we've got some millennials in our organization, and you know, here's what they tell us, right? But we're people, and we're just like, you know, anybody else that's watching this podcast or vodcast, vidcast.
Yeah, whatever, man. It's a video.
Yeah, video. You know, and like the research, I mean, if you actually really dive, I just read this article, and I'm not going to say, you know, the author or the name or anything, but I read this article around, you know, how to engage millennials, and it was a VP of HR for a big company in the States. And I was so blown away by this article because all it was just perpetuating stereotypes. Yeah. You know, there was no research, you know, it wasn't backed by any kind of study. It was like, here's our experience. And it was really like, I added this person on LinkedIn because I wanted to actually be like, really? Is this like, you think that this is okay? Because I think it is time that, you know, we as millennials, we start talking about this. You know, and we start having these conversations, not to disrupt things, but just to collaborate and to work together. And so, you know, we've got a lot of stereotypes around us. And one of the things I think you know, you're passionate about and I'm passionate about is like taking those stereotypes and not necessarily disproving them, but just providing another way to look at that. And, you know, I think that, you know, for an example, you know, one of the stereotypes of millennials is that we're disloyal. Right? And I would just say that.
You define that. What do you mean by that?
We're not loyal to the organizations that we work for, right? So we come in, we work for 2 years, and then we leave and we go to the next place.
Got it. Okay.
And here's the thing, that's true for some people, but it's not true for everybody, right? And that's true for some people who, you know, aren't necessarily millennials, that are other generations as well. You know, I was at a focus group. We were having a focus group with millennials and people from other generations. So just people. We were just having a conversation, and that got brought up. This stereotype of being disloyal, and this woman who was, you know, fell within the millennial generation, she actually spoke up and she said, you know, it's not that we're disloyal. It's that we're not as loyal to companies and organizations as we are to people. And she told a story about how she left the organization when her manager left. And I think that that's a really important point, you know, that it's no longer just, in other generations, you know, our grandparents maybe, you know, grew up with, you went and worked for one company, you were loyal to the company, right. You stayed with the company for 30 years, right? But we're loyal to people, you know, because we connect with people. And so really, you know, if you want to retain millennials, for example, you know, it really has to do with how you treat people. And I think that that's just a new way of working, you know, that some organizations, some people, you know, just aren't comfortable with. And I want to be really careful that we're not hating on any other generation, because that's not our intention. You know, it's really about having a conversation.
Totally. I completely agree with everything you said. And kind of the story that you just shared with me reminds me of a quote from Marcus Buckingham, who's a prolific author around leadership and culture. He says in one of his books, people don't quit jobs. You know, people don't quit. People don't quit jobs. They quit managers. And I think that's so true, because for us, especially, you know, millennials or otherwise, we want a manager, we want a leader that we trust, that we believe in, that has a vision, and we want to follow. And when that disappears, whether you're a boomer or a millennial, as a person, it becomes difficult to continue on and have that sense of trust with him or her. The other thing that I wanted to kind of bring up was the other side of the spectrum. So, you know, we were just talking a little bit about the stereotypes of millennials on one side, but there's the other side of, you know, I read a report where majority of millennials don't identify with the word millennials, right. As in, you know, they just don't feel connected to it. And I think that's really interesting and profound, because of course it makes sense that we don't feel connected to the word millennials, because it was a name that was thrown on us as a generation. It was just a bucket that we were all put into between 1982 and 2000, like you said. And I think I can say for myself, but we don't like just being generalized, because for millennials, we got, a huge variety from A to Z, the different types of people that are represented in that generation. And, a millennial born in 1982 will be very different from a millennial born in 2000. And the same for a millennial born in 1986 like me, between another millennial who was born in 1986. So what we want to try to do with these video series is to show the layers of what millennials actually mean, and how unique we all are as individuals. And we all have our specific strengths, we have our weaknesses, we have our dreams and goals. And as a whole, how do we get closer to that and connect to it so that we can get closer to what we want to get to? And also as a society, how do we get closer to those goals? And Matt, you feel like?
Yeah, I mean, there are four main things that influence, our generation. Okay, and this is based on some research. So one is how we've been brought up, right? So you look at the parenting, and every generation has, again, maybe it's a generalization, a stereotype, but there was a certain kind of approach to parenting, right? So yeah. Gen X was identified as having what we called latchkey kids, right? Because during the 80s, 70s, and 80s, parents were going to work and they were giving their kids these keys so that after school they could just go home and they took care of themselves, right? And that influenced how they parented the next generation. And so, we're kind of characterized as having what are called either helicopter parents, or I like this term, lawnmower parents, okay? Which basically means if we were faced with a challenge, our parents would just come over and mow over it, right? And you hear all these stories about, parents coming into interviews, or parents calling professors being like, why did you give my kid, this grade, and things like that. And it's going to really influence how we, begin to parent. And I'm starting to read a little bit about this as well, as a parent myself. And it is influencing, how we were brought up influences how we bring up the next generation. So that's one, is just how we were brought up. Another one is our experiences. Okay, so I'm at the latter end. You're kind of at the latter end of being a millennial. I spent my summers working. I spent my summers having jobs. But what we're seeing is a lot more millennials are spending their summers having experiences, right? And I see this in the work that I get to do. You've seen this in the work that you've done. You were directly part of this, right? Is that more and more of this generation and the next generation, they're spending their summers traveling, having volunteer experiences, seeing the world. And again, not everybody is doing this, but that influences us. The third is our life. Not circumstances, but our events. So, think of all the massive events that have happened, for example, over the last 20 years, right? All these significant world events that we have experienced in our lifetime. And that's the third. And then the last one is, and we've talked about this, and IBM did a big study, and this is what they found was the single biggest differentiator between generations, is that we're digitally proficient, that we've grown up with the internet and with smartphones and with having access to information, so that really is going to influence how we work, how we live, how we connect with people, and those are the four big things.
Yeah, totally. I can imagine, like, if my parents grew up in this generation with Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, and they had all iPhones or tablets in their hands, they would be probably doing the exact same kind of behavior as we would be doing. Just as humans, we get hooked onto technology in a certain way. So we just came across, I think, as we just landed in a generation where technology just became just omnipresent. It's just everywhere, and there's good and there's bad for that as well. Just going back to the point I was making earlier, just around the idea of the other side of millennials and who we are unique as a generation, is I'm of the mindset, and this might just be me, but yeah, we got this name millennials kind of put on us and bucketed as us. And what we might be able to do is just own it and take it as something like, yeah, millennials, we're going to try to make this the best generation that we can. We've got tremendous number of problems in our society today, with climate change. You have, the difference in income inequality rising. You have issues all over the world, that are specific to different regions and countries. And if us as a generation, I'm probably not articulating this really well here, but if we as a generation can become better leaders, become better society members, equip ourselves with the resources and skills, we can be better prepared to help solve these problems that, unfortunately, we're going to have to face in the coming years, in the coming decades. So why don't we own this word millennials? Let's make it our thing, appreciate our differences, and also know that, if we band together and collectively try to tackle these problems, we can be better as a whole. Again, not very well articulated, but I hope that kind of came through.
I mean, I think that again, that looking at characteristics, we want to make a difference in the world, right? We want to know that the work that we do matters. And again, that may not just be a generation, that may just be the way the world of work is changing. And I think you're seeing this in companies. There has to be some kind of corporate social responsibility attached to the work that they do every day, and there's a bigger demand for this from consumers. And so I think there's a lot here that we're going to unpack over time, Pete. And I want to just be kind of aware of the time that we do have. I'm really interested, kind of throwing it to the audience at some point, maybe at the end of this. And the other thing I want to talk about, I think which would be cool is just let's talk about what are we doing right now that we find that really works. So what's one strategy that you're using that you really find is helping you and giving you that edge? And then what's a book or an app that you're using right now, that is really giving you, again, that edge, and why? So and then maybe the last thing we can do is throw a question out to the audience, and then we can use that as we plan for the next one.
Yeah, that sounds good. You want to start it right now?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's just do this.
Okay. You want me to go first? You want to go first?
Yeah, you go first.
Okay.
So basically, first, what's one strategy? What's one strategy? One system that you use that you find really gives you the edge?
Yeah. So I just wrote a blog post about this, and it's meditation. I've been practicing meditation for the last 3 years, and it has not been an easy journey at all. I struggled to do 1-minute meditations, 2-minute meditations. I'm finally up to the point where I can do, a good 20-minute meditation, and just be able to stay calm and focused. And I think the reason why it gives me an edge is because allows me to realize that in a way I have not control, but that feeling of peace and quiet during my day is so important. And I do have the ability to kind of just get down to the base of who I am, fundamental person who I am, rather than getting taken by the tides of the day, wherever that goes. And, obviously you have to be a certain person at work, but realizing that meditation gives me the opportunity to kind of get back to my roots and who I am, and kind of making things less serious. After meditation, I take myself way less seriously, because I know at the end of the day, I'm still here. I'm still who I am. And if I stay true to that, I'm going to be a happy person. So that's just a bit of it. There's so much more that can be unpacked, but so on that
point, hey, where can people actually read about this? You just said you had a blog post. So where can people learn more about this or read that blog post?
Yeah, so peternakamura.com is my blog. Check it out there. Just look it up, and yeah, it's a quick post there.
And what do you use, to help you with that meditation? Because I mean, there are so many apps out there. There are so many resources. What's your go-to for meditation?
Yeah, I use this app called Calm, which is free for kind of the basic meditations. And I would recommend, if you're just starting out with meditation, go and try it out. Use their kind of free 1 to 2 minute basically timer. It's basically a timer with a little bit of calming background sound, and see how you do with just sitting down for a couple minutes. you want to take it up to the next level, look out for this podcast called the Daily Meditation Podcast. It's on iTunes, on SoundCloud. Look it up on the web, and it's great. It's run by a great meditation teacher. It's free. There's a new, unique meditation that's provided every single day. So that's what allowed me to take my jump to the next step.
Right on.
What about you, man? Give us one strategy.
Yeah, so I think, and I'm just thinking about my morning this morning. So something that really, I think, gives me an edge and that I love so much is just having a morning and a nighttime routine, and just the power in having those routines. So, in the morning, I like to get up early. It took me a while to get to this place, of getting up early, because, there's that, I talk to a lot of people about this and they say, well, I'm just not a morning person, right? And it's like, well, you're just not a morning person until you have to become a morning person, or you set that intention to become a morning person. And so, a couple of years ago, I read this really great book called What the Most Successful People Do Before Breakfast. Mm-hmm. And essentially what it boils down to is they do one of three things. They nurture themselves, they nurture their relationships, or they nurture their career. And so they use those early mornings, like that time in the morning when the world's still sleeping and nobody can get to them, to either nurture themselves, so work out, do yoga, meditate, that type of stuff, or they nurture the relationships. So they spend time with their loved ones, their family. They write letters to people they haven't connected with in a while, or they nurture their careers. So they read, for career. They might, if they have a side project they're working on, they spend the time in the morning doing that. And that really influenced me for a couple of reasons. One, because it allowed me to understand that I don't have to do all of those things every morning, that I just need to do one of them. And so, planning is a big part of my morning routine. The other part of it is, there are three things I like to try to do if I can get up early enough. The first is, I get up, I make coffee and I sit down and I read a little bit. And I read for myself. I read for my own development. I'm reading a book right now called Shambhala, the Path of the Secret Warrior, the Sacred Path of the Warrior, because I'm really interested in just like this idea of what it means to be a warrior. And then I journal. And like you, I have questions that I ask myself every morning to kind of set the intention for my day. And then if I have time, or I've built out the time or created the time, then I work out, I won't necessarily always go to the gym, but I'll do kettlebell workouts. And I find like when I can nail all three of those things first thing in the morning, or any of those three things first thing in the morning, my day is so much more productive, so much more energized, because I think how you start your day is how you live your day. Mm-hmm. So that's definitely, and then nighttime routine, same deal, shutting technology off an hour before bed, again, doing some reading, maybe some meditation. I'm a huge journaler, right? I like check in with myself. How'd my day go? Who are people that I want to thank? What am I grateful for? What are those three things that happened today that I'm grateful for? And that how you end your night really influences how you set up the next day and how you live that next morning. So that's definitely something we can talk more about too, over time.
Yeah, totally. I have a very similar morning ritual as you do as well. And like you said, when you hit those three core components, this definitely puts you're in the step in the right direction. You just feel like you've done stuff already in the day, and the rest is just gravy. Yeah.
If you get that done in the morning, like you just kill the day, right? Yeah, because exactly. You've got the energy, you've got the intention, you've invested in yourself. And it's not always easy, right? So, the other part of it is just not to be attached to it, to put the intention to do the planning, but there are mornings where none of that happens because, I've got a 3.5-year-old and, he's not always like, yeah, Dad, go meditate. I'll be cool. I'll just sit here, so it's not being attached to those, but really putting the intention. If I can do that 80% of the time, and it means getting up before anybody else, then that works.
Yeah. So yeah, it's about did you put in the effort? Did you do your best to do this, rather than just thinking, did I get it done? Because they're two very different things, and you can control one, but you can't control the other. So control the process, control the intention, and you've already, gone through 75%, 80% of the battle.
Totally, man.
Okay, so what was the second?
The app. Like, and you touched on, but what's another app that you're using right now that like, or one that you've been using for a long time that people might want to look into?
Yeah, so I have an app called Pomodoro that I use, and just kind of relating it to the morning ritual. And there's a reason why I call it ritual, not routine. But I use it to just time myself every 15 minutes for that specific activity. So I do 15 minutes of reading in the morning. I do 15 minutes of just kind of checking in on like my personal email, checking in my bank account to plug in all kind of transactions that have come up on our credit card, and the kind of nuts and bolts type stuff that I just want to get done at the start of the day. And then 15 minutes for working on my blog every day. And I time myself because I could easily get off track with the kind of, checking the sports scores from last night or replying back to all of my emails in my personal inbox. But I just want to keep it, discipline myself to the 15 minutes so I can move on to kind of 3 main buckets that I have every morning. So that's been really helpful for me. What about you?
Cool. So one I've been using for the last couple of weeks that I think is really cool, it's along the same lines of the Pomodoro technique, of intentionally setting, 15, 20, 25 minutes to focus on one thing. But it's called Forest, Forest.
Right.
And you can get it for, have you heard about this?
You told me about it last time.
Yeah. So basically it's the same idea. You set the on your phone, you set the time that you don't want to be distracted. But instead of just having the countdown, there's a little tree that starts to grow over that time. And if you go out of the app, to check your Facebook or check your social, you kill the tree, right? Like, and I don't want to kill trees. So it kind of it's kind of like incentivizes you not to do that. And what I love about it, man, is it just like, it helps me be intentional about where I'm putting my time. And I find sometimes, if I'm home and I'm hanging out with my son, and I'm like going over to my phone to check like just who's liked something on Facebook or Instagram. Yeah. And I'm like, why am I doing that instead of just being present right here with this incredible little human being? Yeah. And so I put this thing on and I don't want to kill the tree, right? So, and it tracks it, how many times you do this over the course of a day and a week, and lets you know like how you're using your time. So that's definitely one that I use, and I'm using quite a bit. Really quickly, something that I use on my laptop and on my computer is called Rescue Time. And so what Rescue Time basically does, you can set your parameters, but it gives you a daily and weekly report of how much time you've wasted and where you've been using your time when you're online. So it tells me how much time I've spent on social. It tells me how much time I've spent using, other applications or other media. Like, so it's really cool. Just as I really think that, awareness is key to all of this, right? Because when you become aware, it's like, wow, I'm actually wasting a ton of time, then you start to recognize the choices that you have. And when you recognize those choices, that's how you start to create change, when you take action on those.
100%.
Yeah.
Cool, man. And sorry, so for that app, what are you using? The Forest app, is that an iPhone app or is it available on Android?
You can get it both on iPhone and Android.
You have to keep it open throughout the day, or just like?
No, you just set it for like the time that you want to be focused. Yeah. But if you close it during that time, you kill the tree.
Oh, okay, cool. So it's right. So it has to be open, and that's your focus time. Because if you go into another app, that makes sense.
So if I have it on, and then I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna check my email right now, I would kill the tree.
Got it.
You don't want to kill the tree. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
So you want to grow a forest.
Exactly. No, wisdom. Yeah. I love it.
Cool, man.
Rescue Time is great too. I use it. It also gives you like a productivity score at the end of the week, which is good. Kind of get a sense of how productive you are based on your computer habits. And it's free too. And what was the last question? Is it a book?
I think that's it, man. I think that's where we. The last thing we want to do before we end, and just being aware of time, is just like, let's get some feedback. So if you've watched this and there's value in this, or you have questions, or maybe we've just like wasted 45 minutes of your time, let us know, right? Because we want to be continuously improving this. I think we both want something that is of value to people more than anything else. So we want to know, what are your questions? You know, what do you think? Share this, you know, if you think that there's something here that will help other people in your lives. And I guess that's where we could end.
Cool, man. Yeah, everybody comment on Matt's denim jacket, because I think that is worth commenting on.
Yeah, you should. I match. I've got like a denim. I've got the Canadian tuxedo on right now. This is
Nice.
This is the thing. It's not a jacket, it's a shirt.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Denim shirt. Same thing.
All right.
Cool, man. Well, yeah, like Matt said, you know, please comment, please share. If you have any suggestions on making this better, let us know. Until next time, where can people find you, Matt, if they want to connect with you and kind of read your stuff?
You can check me out on social, so LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You can also go to my website, which is matt-todd.com. I blog on there. I write on there. A bunch of other places, but those are probably the best places to start.
Sweet, cool. And you can find me at peternakamura.com, and on Twitter, I'm just @PeterNakamura. But thanks so much for watching. Looking forward to seeing you guys next time.
Yeah.
Have a great month, guys.
See you, everyone.
Bye.